The year is 2022. Dragon Ball Super Superhero is released, and fans worldwide watch their favorite characters return to the big screen. The frontrunners are the well-respected Piccolo and, of course, the prodigy Son Gohan. It is fascinating to see them as the main cast, as this is not the first time they were getting the spotlight. It is also not their first time dealing with an enemy without Goku's help. While Cell is known as the arch-nemesis for Gohan, similar to Goku and Frieza, there was one villain many people tend to forget. The OG villain and greatest challenge at the time, allowing future enemies to follow in his footsteps of villainy. The one entity to establish the foundation of Dragon Ball Z tropes. That is right, it is none other than Garlic Jr. Okay, maybe I'm overhyping his character a bit. He's not people's top favorite bad guy compared to every other enemy past his era. However, the real question that needs to be asked is, how strong is Garlic Jr.? The first thing we must acknowledge is trying to figure out what scales to Garlic Jr. in comparison. Now, for those who have watched my Cooler video, which you can check out if you like, the film's connection to the Toei anime is very flimsy. One thing I didn't focus on enough was that Koyama, the writer of the films, has said several times that there are many inconsistencies between continuities. This is due to the films being written 6 months before their official release. Hence, it was difficult to be concise with the anime or manga when its story development is left unknown past the newest broadcast episode. Likewise, Toriyama said that the movies are in different dimensions and believes the guides are valid sources of information, which states that many of these films are self-contained events only. However, both Dead Zone and Cooler's Revenge are the two exceptions to this line of thinking, apparently. You see, in Daizenshu 7, both films are explicitly included within the Dragon Ball timeline. Not only that, Garlic Jr. returns in the actual anime after the Frieza saga, directly continuing the first Toei movie story. It doesn't stop there because during GT, which I did say cannot connect to the films based on Toriyama's official statement, references the usage of the sacred water, which was a prevalent concept within the anime Garlic Jr. saga. On top of that, within the anime of Dragon Ball Super, there is a potential reference to the saga. Before the Tournament of Power saga begins, Android 17 mispronounces Krillin's daughter's name, Marin, which Android 18 got furious over. It is possibly a tongue-in-cheek reference to Krillin's ex-girlfriend Marin, spelled with one R, who appears as an anime-exclusive character within the filler saga. The last surprising connection is that Icarus, Gohan's dragon friend, also appears in the anime saga. That means that the Tree of Might film has to be canon, since that is where Icarus is introduced. Unfortunately, that is where most debates start to get very heated. For one, the guides state that movie 3 is a movie event only and is not placed within the timeline the Daizenshu created, meaning Icarus should not be in the anime, but still is. The second issue is, as fans know already, Gogeta and Broly are both canon within the so-called mainstream timeline thanks to the Super Broly movie. Therefore, all 3 Toei Broly films and Fusion Reborn cannot happen. At this point, we must cherry pick which films could still occur within the anime continuity and which cannot. Again, it's a lot of mental gymnastics. So you know what? Screw it. Garlic Jr. is the one outlier of getting an anime exclusive arc that no other villain got such an opportunity. Well, yeah. So for this video, I'll make an exception. I'll give him a movie scaling and an anime scaling section, since I don't want to waste more time on the whole movie anime continuity argument. That might as well be its own video at this point. We will use every source to fully understand the depths of his power and how he fully stacks up to where Dragon Ball is currently at. Immediately, Garlic Jr. shows no mercy. He and his crew surprise attacked Piccolo and nearly killed him. Naturally, Piccolo was caught off guard, but you'll find out why this is still an impressive feat in a bit. Later, Garlic Jr. successfully collects the Dragon Balls and achieves immortality, unlike everyone else. After his wish, both Kami and Goku arrive on the scene, with Kami wanting to defeat Garlic Jr. as he intends to rule the world. It is one of the fewest times Kami fights. With no hesitation, Garlic Jr. bullies Kami for his lunch money, and yet Kami stands his ground using an explosive way to throw Garlic Jr. off guard. People seem to forget that Kami was a literal beast. A few years prior, Goku Pulse Ultra Divine Water defeats King Piccolo on his own. For additional context, characters like Roshi were so strong that with his Kamehameha, he destroys the moon into nothing, but believes anything he does to King Piccolo won't kill him before he retains his youth. all the guides confirm that max power Roshi is a moonbuster. This is proven as Tien can rival the Turtle Hermit during their tournament match, and he is shown using the Tri-Beam against Kid Goku, which Roshi confirmed is more destructive than the Kamehameha. Even then, Roshi believes if the Z Fighters fought as a team, they still cannot beat old King Piccolo. Kid Goku defeated this stronger Youth Regain King Piccolo, meaning Kid Goku would also be at least, if not beyond, moon level of power. Kami casually flicked away this moon tier character on some Beerus level of disrespect. And if that is still not enough proof, he also recreated the moon in exchange for Goku's tail just cause he can. Garlic Jr. was throwing this Kami around like a ragdoll, and the guides confirm he was no match for the demon, to the point he was desperate to self-destruct just to win. Afterward is where his peak power gets to shine. Garlic Jr. transforms with the games referring him as Super Garlic Jr. In this state, he speed blitz Goku and Piccolo, eating all their punches and throwing them around even with their teamwork. According to the guidebooks, Makian Gigantification, or just Gigantification, increases his power by many tens of times. Now notice it only refers to his strength and not his overall battle power. In terms of his strength, it increases anywhere from 10 to less than hundreds of times over, since otherwise it would have been worded as 100 times. However, this doesn't include his speed. Piccolo calls this out within Garlic Jr.'s anime saga, where his speed decreases in his transformed state, similar to that of Grade 3 Super Saiyan. Before, Goku is shown training with Kami within the anime and learns how to dodge lightning, and would only naturally surpass lightning level of combat and reaction speed. Plus, Piccolo casually throws a Ki Blast and destroys the moon while weighted during a relative era. Even during the 23rd Budokai, Goku's Super Kamehameha can shatter the moon, and Piccolo survived point blank. Toriyama stated in an interview that the distance of the moon to the Earth within the Dragon Ball series is the same as our real-life moon. Piccolo's blast took literal seconds to hit an object that far away. Even under the most downplayed calc, would still place his combat speed at relativistic plus level, since in real life, light can travel from the moon to Earth nearly in a second. Despite Garlic Jr.'s reduced speed, he manhandles both fighters beyond lightning to light combat speed downplayed. The guides also confirmed Super Garlic Jr. surpasses them. Keep in mind, Piccolo himself has said he's been training since his defeat during the 23rd Budokai, meaning both fighters are relative in power when they face Raditz, as movie 1 occurs before the Saiyan's arrival. Only after both fighters remove their weighted clothes and work together could they overpower Garlic Jr. Also, likely due to Garlic Jr.'s reduced speed, Goku could throw a kick in, showing that they can at least outclass Super Garlic Jr.'s speed, but not his power unless they team up. However, due to his immortality, he survives their Teen Blast that he probably would not have survived normally. Here's where Garlic Jr. demonstrates his best feat ever, the Dead Zone technique. You see, this ability is one of the prime examples of why movie scaling would break all of Dragon Ball Z anime scaling. According to Daizenshu 7, the Dead Zone is a hyperspace created by Garlic Jr.'s ki. It is so dangerous that no ray of light can escape and can affect anyone on a physical and astral level. If you check most definitions of hyperspace, it is commonly referred to as a dimension or space beyond the third dimension, meaning Garlic Jr. created a fourth dimensional reality with his powers. Not just the guys, but characters like Kami state that Garlic Jr. created the Dead Zone with his powers. Garlic Jr. would unironically scale to the likes of super era characters just because of this one feat. What is more outlandish is that just as Garlic Jr. is about to win, Kid Gohan awakens and instinctively channels his hidden potential, which Garlic Jr.'s peak power doesn't compare to. As a result, Kid Gohan uses his power to push and seal away Garlic Jr. So as stupid as it is to say, Kid Gohan with his hidden potential scales above Dead Zone Garlic Jr., reaching 4th dimensional in power. Now before everyone gets angry, there are ways to go about how this feat can make sense. The first explanation is that it's movie scaling only. Since the films don't connect to anime scaling, Garlic Jr. can reach said levels without much issues. Other than maybe from a writing perspective, I understand that having early Dragon Ball era characters be that strong is too over the top. But multiverse theory can't allow that, as dumb as it sounds. The second explanation is to debunk the whole fourth dimensional scaling. I hope everyone can understand that not all terms have one single definition or meaning. Words can be used under several contexts and therefore different interpretations. The word hyperspace, especially within fiction, can simply be a made-up term to define a reality not connected to the universe. Terms like subspace, null space, realms, and so on, especially within Dragon Ball, are no exception. The Dead Zone can simply be a pocket reality that Garlic Jr. happens to create that is not even the size of an actual universe. As an example, we see how Buuhan nearly collapsed the universe with other layered dimensions, or how in Super Broly, Gogeta and Broly punched through another weird purple dimension. Even the teleportation zone, when using instant transmission, would be considered a sort of hyperspace or subspace dimension. Third explanation, Daizenshuu 6 describes the Dead Zone as that of a black hole. I'm not going to break down how a black hole works since that's gonna go beyond the scope of this video. Point is that considering how the series consistently state not even light can escape, which is one aspect black holes are known for, the Dead Zone can simply be a black hole creation technique of sorts. If those options are still not good enough, there is one final explanation. According to Dragon Ball Z, the anime adventure role-playing game booklet, it describes the Dead Zone as a pocket dimension devoid of light, and Garlic Jr. is simply opening a portal into the Dead Zone. Now obviously, I will point out that this booklet is a third-party source, as it does contradict what is clearly stated by the cast that Garlic Jr. did in fact create the Dead Zone. Popo also says this when Garlic Jr. returns. Though what is paradoxical is that when Garlic Jr. escapes the Dead Zone, he refers to it as a world. In kanji, Sekai can mean society, world, or universe. Meaning, you could also argue that one statement means Garlic Jr. created a planet-sized pocket dimension or a universe-sized reality. Given how even the Daizenshuu gives two different descriptions for the technique, it's very much up to the viewer's interpretation as to whether Garlic Jr. truly is that strong to create a 4D dimension, or is merely connecting the universe to a sealed off pocket reality. I think the moral of the story is that Koyama is on crack. Either way, Garlic Jr. would return years later after his defeat. Exactly 9 months after Goku defeats Frieza, where his anime saga begins. It's due to his home planet arriving near Earth, the planet Makyo. Yes, planet, not star. The English dub refers to it as Makyo Star, which in kanji, Hoshi can mean planet or star. However, in the original Japanese dub, Garlic Jr. and his minions refer to it as their home planet, which act as a rogue planet of sorts. Due to planet Makyo being filled with evil energy, the closer it is to any Makian, their dormant powers are unleashed. The guidebook states that their power increases many tens of times. As such, Garlic Jr. breaks out with the planet Makyo Amp, meaning that he unironically breaks out of a 4D dimension. I'm just saying. Anyways, he invades Kami's lookout, finding the black water mist or aqua mist, transforming the Earth population into demons with a few survivors. Garlic Jr. wishes to get his revenge against the Z team. Kami once again tries his best to stop Garlic Jr. He again catches Garlic Jr. lacking, even with a supposed planet Makyo amp. Initially, Gohan and Krillin couldn't do anything to Garlic Jr. due to taking Kami and Mr. Popo hostage. However, thanks to Piccolo pretending to be under the influence of the black water mist, manages to trick Garlic Jr., freeing them and allowing them to fight at full power without being held back. We see how base form Garlic Jr. somewhat holding his own against a suppressed but unweighted post-Namek Saga Piccolo. It's not until Planet Makyo reaches its peak approach that Garlic Jr. transforms once again, potentially getting not only several 10 times boost in strength thanks to his super form, but another tens of times boost because of his home world. As such, he then contends with Piccolo, who struggles more compared to his base form. Keep in mind that Piccolo fused with Nail, raising his power level to 1 million and can rival the likes of second form Frieza. First form Frieza in the anime has at least dwarf star to highball large star level of power based on destroying planet Vegeta. as well as scaling above King Vegeta, who casually destroyed many planets by literally flexing, who only had a power level of at least 10,000. Super Golok Jr. with his Makyo power-up rivaling Piccolo, who is 2 times first form Frieza's power level, easily places both characters within that star level range of attack potency. However, as mentioned before, Piccolo notes that his speed decreases and is later shown using a similar gigantification power-up, but without the cost of his speed, clearly showing that Piccolo is stronger than Golok Jr.'s peak. The only reason why Piccolo failed to defeat him was that at the same time, Kami's life force was depleting while trying to undo the effects of the black water mist, heavily weakening Piccolo's power. Also, according to the Anime Adventure Game Guidebook, Golok Jr. within this saga was given a power level of 1.5 million, while Piccolo reached 2 million. Since guides confirm Frieza's power level being above 1 million in second form, and Piccolo scales above him, as well as shown training for 9 months before Golok Jr.'s attack, the guidebook somewhat checks out. Though I like to point out that the same booklet states that Planet Makyo gives Golok Jr. a 2 times boost instead. So you could argue that Super Golok Jr. has a power level of 3 million. However, the booklet never clarifies whether Golok Jr.'s power level is for his base form or super form. Even then, as the 2 times multiplier is for role-playing mechanics, you can argue that it goes against what is to be a several tens of times multiplier. Perhaps you can use this as a lowball if you think 100 times is an exaggeration. I forgot to mention that keeping up with Piccolo's speed would drastically jump Golok Jr.'s speed stat, even when nerfed in his super form. Seeing as how early Z Piccolo can throw near light speed attacks with a power level of not even 1000, who then scales to the likes of Goku post 100 times gravity training with a power level of 90,000. Mind you, Goku, who has yet to finish his gravity training, can react to meteors while trying to reach Namek, which took 6 days to travel a literal universe distance. Even under the most absurd downplayed calc ever, would easily place beings like Fused with Neo Piccolo massively FTL, literally hundreds of times faster than light. Now granted, due to his arrogance, Golok Jr. is caught lacking again, getting damaged by an injured Krillin. The only one who can stop Golok Jr. now is Kid Gohan. Due to his hidden potential, Gohan makes Golok Jr. look like fodder. As Goku punches through King Piccolo, like father like son, Gohan pierces through Golok Jr. with 0 issues, meaning this Gohan with his hidden potential low-key could one-shot post-Namek Saga Piccolo. However, due to his immortality, he survives the hit. Golok Jr. once again tries to take out the hero with the Dead Zone and nearly wins. However, thanks to Krillin's assistance and Piccolo regaining his strength, Gohan one-shots the planet Makyo. As such, Golok Jr. loses all his powers and is once again sucked up into the Dead Zone forever this time. To those detractors who still don't believe that DBZ characters have planet level of destructive capacity or area of effect, Gohan destroys a roguelike planet. Even if we assume it's a small planet the size of planet Mercury, is nonetheless proof that these characters are clearly beyond planet level and area of effect a long time ago. Lastly, I'll go over all the secondary material concerning Golok Jr.'s powers. According to the Dragon Ball movie pamphlet, Golok Jr. has a power level of 1450. Now, if this did correlate to the anime, he would rival the likes of Raditz. His power level varies based on each source, but reaches 1200 at least to 1600 at best. Even the movie pamphlet places movie version Raditz slightly above Golok Jr. However, if this is only on movie scaling, sadly we can't say much about what these numbers can do AP wise. Most of his video game appearances recreate the storylines of the movie and anime saga, but there are a few things worth noting. His first video game appearance completely rewrites his movie storyline. Within the game Dragon Ball Z Kyoshu Saiyajin, we see how for this continuity, after defeating Raditz, the Z fighters are informed of Vegeta and Nappa's arrival where they train for a year. While Goku trains with King Kai, the Z fighters need to find the Dragon Balls to revive him. Golok Jr. appears and orders his henchmen to get the Dragon Balls first so that he can grant his wish of immortality. The Z fighters defeat all his goons and then heads to his castle to fight Golok Jr. According to the game itself, the player can use a scouter to see the power level of each enemy, and Garlic Jr. in base has a power level of 2,500. Within his Super Garlic Jr. form, he has a power level of 3,500. So in this continuity, whether in base or his super form, Garlic Jr. scales above Raditz. Despite this, Garlic Jr. is defeated and killed off, since unlike the first film, he didn't obtain his wish for immortality first. Instead, the Dragon Balls revive Goku back. As for Tenkaichi 3, I like to point out that while it's a game recreation of the anime Saga, Piccolo once again states how his super form decreases his speed, showing that his form is at most a power boost but not a speed boost. Lastly, he appears in most hero games and gets a slight buff. Thanks to Babidi, he obtains his King of Destruction form, which is a glorified upgrade of the Majin form. Known as manipulation sorcery within the guides, it draws out a user's hidden potential. Naturally, Garlic Jr. stacking his super form on top of his Destruction King form and potentially with his Planet Makyo boost would make him even stronger. Outside of that though, he isn't giving any more additional scenarios. Only within Ultimate Mission X, a slight difference is that he faces both the player avatar and Zeno Goten along with the original cast of the first film, and still loses. As such, unlike Cooler who can scale to Heroes characters, Garlic Jr. is given no such special treatment. Anyways, that is all for Garlic Jr.'s overall scaling. In terms of anime stats, Dead Zone era Garlic Jr. would be at least moon level lowballed. Mid-ball, small planet level, and high-balled large planet would be Super Garlic Jr.'s consistent range of power. It only depends how much higher you think he scales in comparison to every other feat where characters vaporize the moon, which would accurately be calced to large planet as well. Heck, I'd say he would just barely reach the baseline Dwarf Star level attack potency, but that's neither here nor there. As for speed, lowballed, he is for sure at least a lightning timer, making him massively hypersonic plus. Mid-ball to high-ball, Garlic Jr. would be relativistic to very likely faster than light, but not to an extreme level. When including his Planet Makyo amp that would correlate to his anime Saga stats, lowballed Garlic Jr. would reach Dwarf Star level. Mid-ball to high-ball, Star to large star level, since he scales relative to first form and second form Frieza due to his planet destruction feat. As for speed, likewise lowballed, he would still be at least light speed in combat. Mid-ball to high-balled, he's only dozens of times to hundreds of times faster than light, reaching FTL plus to a massively FTL level of speed. Now as for his movie scaling, sadly the only thing we can say regarding to his stats depends on how you interpret his Dead Zone ability. His power level varies from planet level to possibly universal plus level if you consider the hyper-dimensional statement as valid, but that's up to you to decide how much you want to hype up said power. Since he does scale to Gohan, who did destroy Planet Makyo, we can at least say for sure his movie scaling would be at the very least within the planetary range in attack potency. Likewise, his speed is also vague when referring to his movie scaling as well. As for his gaming appearances, we just know that Dead Zone era wise, he's either weaker than, equal, or superior to Raditz, depending on his movie power level and his NES game story. Likewise, for his Makyo Star Saga, he still scales relative to post-Namek Saga Piccolo for all other games. Overall, Garlic Jr. as a composite version would be around Raditz level, with Planet Makyo amp around second form Frieza level, and when granting his King of Destruction form, potentially reaching third form Frieza level. If allowing the Dead Zone lore, he low-key scales to the likes of early Dragon Ball Super era, like Super Saiyan God and a heavily suppressed Beerus unironically. I just find it funny that Garlic Jr. could one-shot most Dragon Ball villains with just his Dead Zone. Just have them all get sucked up into the void and Garlic Jr. wins. And yo, I'm just saying, Garlic Jr. Dead Zones Jiren and becomes the strongest in the universe. Although again, as I said prior, if Garlic Jr. is fourth dimensional, then technically everyone within Dragon Ball Z who scales above him is also fourth dimensional. Or maybe Koyama's on crack. Nah, but for real though, that's all I got for y'all this time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.